Ladies and gentlemen, today, I want to share a powerful and often misunderstood truth. Sometimes God wants you to be alone. Not because He's punishing you, not because He's forgotten you, but because He is preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine. Throughout history, we've seen that isolation often precedes elevation. Before God takes you to the next level, He separates you. Think about it. Moses was alone on the mountain when he received the 10 commandments. Elijah was alone in the cave when God whispered His plans. Even Jesus retreated to the wilderness before beginning His ministry. Solitude is not rejection, it's preparation. In moments of aloneness, God clarifies your purpose. When distractions are stripped away, His voice becomes unmistakable. It is in the stillness that God reveals the blueprint for your life. You may feel abandoned, but what if this solitude is God's way of saying, I need your full attention? Remember, growth requires separation. A seed must be planted alone, buried in the dark before it can sprout and grow. Similarly, God uses solitude as a place of mission. What feels like isolation is of incubation, a season of same working on His what He's called you to do. Let me remind you of a profound truth. Aloneness is not loneliness. Being alone doesn't mean you are forgotten. It means you are set apart. God is calling you to be holy, which means to be set apart for His purposes. In these moments, He is reminding you that your value does not come from the crowd, but from Him. Throughout history, revelation has come in isolation. When God speaks, He often does so in the quiet moments, away from the noise of the world. It is in the stillness that we can hear Him most clearly. Perhaps you feel like you've been abandoned by people, but could it be that God has orchestrated this solitude to draw you closer to Him? Solitude is also God's workshop for refinement. In these quiet times, He molds your character and strengthens your resolve. He prepares you to face challenges and equips you with the tools you need for your destiny. What you see as isolation, God says preparation. Let's not forget that intimacy with God grows in moments of solitude. Just as any relationship deepens through undivided attention, your relationship with God thrives when you give Him your undistracted time. He wants you to know Him deeply. Not just in passing, but in an intimate, personal way. In solitude, your identity is solidified. Away from the opinions of others, you discover who you truly are in God. No longer defined by the world's labels, you begin to see yourself as God sees you, chosen, beloved, and called for a purpose. And here's a critical truth. Separation prepares you for partnership. Before God entrusts you with relationships in marriage, friendships, or business, He ensures you are whole on your own. He wants you to rely on Him first so that when relationships come, they complement rather than complete you. Aloneness births vision. Some of the greatest ideas and movements in history were birthed in solitude. In quiet reflection, God plants dreams in your heart and gives you the vision to bring them to life. So if you find yourself in a season of solitude, don't despair. God is working in the silence. He is preparing you, refining you, and equipping you. Remember, what feels like isolation is often God's way of setting you apart for something extraordinary. Embrace the aloneness, because it is in these moments that God does His greatest work in you. Before God elevates you, He often separates you. Isolation is not an act of rejection, but a divine strategy for preparation. When you look at the lives of those whom God used mightily, you will notice a recurring theme. They experience seasons of solitude before stepping into that purpose. These moments of isolation were not by accident. They were necessary steps in their journey. Consider Moses, who spent 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep before God called him to deliver the Israelites. This season of solitude was where Moses learned humility, patience, and leadership qualities he needed to fulfill his destiny. Or think about Joseph, who was separated from his family and unjustly imprisoned. In what seemed like rejection, God was positioning him, shaping his character, and preparing him for the moment when he would save an entire nation. Isolation allows for an intimate encounter with God. It removes the noise of the world, the opinions of others, and the distractions that often cloud our minds. In this quiet place, God speaks, teaches, and reveals His plans. What may feel like a season of loneliness is actually an invitation to go deeper, to rely solely on Him, and to be molded into the person He has called you to be. This process of separation is uncomfortable because it challenges our dependency on people, routines, and comforts. But growth rarely happens in comfort zones. A seed must be buried in the soil, hidden, isolated, and seemingly forgotten before it can break forth into life. Similarly, God uses seasons of isolation to refine us, strengthen our faith, and prepare us for the elevation to come. When we understand that isolation precedes elevation, it shifts our perspective. Instead of resisting solitude, we embrace it, recognizing it as a sign that God is working. He is not only preparing the opportunity for you, but He is also preparing you for the opportunity. Solitude creates a space where distractions fade and clarity emerges. In the stillness of being alone, we are no longer bothered by external voices, opinions, and demands. Instead, we are given the opportunity to listen deeply to God, to ourselves, and to the purpose He has placed within us. In this sacred quiet, what was once unclear begins to take shape. Solitude is not just an absence of noise, it is an intentional pause that allows the important things to rise to the surface. Throughout history, some of the most transformative moments have occurred when individuals stepped away from the crowd to seek clarity in solitude. Consider the example of Jesus, who often withdrew to desolate places to pray. In those moments of aloneness, He found renewal, guidance, and strength to carry out His mission. It wasn't a retreat in the sense of avoiding responsibility, but a purposeful stepping away to align with the Father's will. The absence of external influence in solitude helps us strip away false identities and roles we might have adopted to please others. It becomes a mirror that reflects who we truly are, our fears, our dreams, and our calling. Without the expectations of others clouding our judgment, we can begin to discern what truly matters and what God is specifically calling us to do. It is here that He whispers direction into our spirit, giving us the focus and assurance we need to move forward. Solitude also allows for introspection and self-examination. When we are surrounded by people caught up in the busyness of life, it is easy to lose sight of our deeper purpose. We go through the motions, meeting deadlines, fulfilling obligations, and yet feeling disconnected from the greater reason for our existence. Solitude disrupts that cycle. It forces us to pause, reflect, and evaluate the alignment of our actions with our ultimate purpose. In this space of stillness, the distractions of the world lose their hold, and we can finally hear the voice of God clearly. His direction becomes the compass that guides us. Often the purpose He reveals in solitude is not something we would have discovered in the noise of everyday life. It is unique, deeply personal, and directly tied to the reason we were created. Solitude becomes the fertile ground where this divine purpose takes root and begins to grow. Growth is a process that often demands a separation. Just as seed must be buried in soil, removed from mouth by darkness, surrounded by darkness. So too must we go through seasons of separation to fully develop into who we are meant to be. Separation is not a punishment. It is a necessary condition for transformation. It creates the environment where growth can take place without interference or distractions. When we are surrounded by familiarity, it is easy to stay comfortable and stagnant. The presence of constant support, routine, and external validation can unintentionally hinder our ability to stretch beyond our current capacity. Growth requires us to step out of that comfort zone, away from what is predictable, and into a space where we are forced to rely on God and our inner strength. It is in these moments of separation that we begin to discover what we are truly capable of. Consider the process of pruning in gardening. A plant cannot grow to its full potential if it is not pruned. Cutting away what is unnecessary or dead allows the plant to focus its energy on producing healthy fruit. In the same way, God sometimes allows us to be separated from people, habits, or environments that no longer serve His purpose in our lives. This process may feel painful, but it is essential for our growth. What He removes is not meant to harm us, but to create space for what He wants to bring into our lives. Separation also fosters self-reliance and resilience. When we are removed from the support systems we have always leaned on, we are forced to stand on our own. This is where true growth happens, when we learn to trust God more fully and develop the skills and character needed to thrive. In these moments, we realize that our strength does not come from external sources, but from within, rooted in God's grace and provision. Growth often occurs in isolation. A caterpillar enters the cocoon alone, undergoing a complete transformation in solitude. Similarly, when God calls us into a season of separation, it is because He is working on us in why He has ways that require undivided attention. It is a sacred process where the old is shed to make way for the new. Separation also removes distractions that could stifle our growth. The opinions of others, the busyness of life, and the constant noise of the world can drown out the still, small voice of God. When we are separated from these influences, we gain clarity and focus. It is in this place of quiet that God refines us, teaching us lessons that can only be learned in the stillness of separation. Aloneness and loneliness are not the same, though they are often confused. Loneliness is a feeling of emptiness, a sense of lacking connection or companionship. It is the pain of separation from others. Aloneness, on the other hand, is a state of being set apart, often by design or divine intention. It is not a punishment, but an opportunity for growth, reflection, and renewal. Aloneness can be misunderstood, especially in a world that glorifies constant connection and busyness. Society often equates being alone with being unloved or unwanted, but that is far from the truth. Aloneness is a sacred space where God often works on us in ways that would not be possible in noise of company. It is in these moments of solitude that we find the quiet to hear His voice, the stillness to sense His presence, and the clarity to understand His plans for our lives. Being alone can also reveal our inner strength. When we are surrounded by others, it is easy to depend on them for validation, direction, or comfort. Aloneness removes those external crutches and teaches us to lean on God. It is in the absence of others that we discover our capacity to stand, to endure, and to thrive, not because of who we are, but because of who God is in us. We also learn the beauty of self-awareness. The constant presence of others can sometimes cloud our understanding of ourselves. We can lose sight of who we are when we are trying to fit into the expectations or opinions of those around us. In aloneness, we strip away those external influences and face our true selves. It is a time of self-discovery, where God gently reveals both our strengths and the areas where we need to grow. This process is not about judgment, but about refinement. Aloneness can also deepen our relationship with God. Just as a relationship with a loved one grows through intentional time spent together, our relationship with God strengthens in the moments when we give Him our undivided attention. These are the times when we can pour out our hearts to Him, seek His guidance, and experience His love in ways that are profoundly personal. Aloneness becomes a place of intimacy with God, where His presence fills the space that might otherwise feel empty. Aloneness prepares us for what is ahead. It is a time of equipping and building. The quiet seasons are often where God plants seeds of vision, cultivates character, and develops the resilience we will need for the next chapter of our lives. While loneliness focuses on what is missing, aloneness reveals what is being added: a deeper connection with God, a stronger sense of self, and a clearer understanding of our purpose. Isolation is often the environment when revelation thrives. Throughout history, God has chosen moments of solitude to unveil His plans, speak profound truths, and give direction to His called. When we are removed from the noise and distractions of life, our hearts and minds become more attuned to His voice. Isolation is not a void, it's a sacred space where clarity and understanding emerge. In the Bible, some of the most significant revelations occurred in isolation. Moses received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, far removed from the people of Israel. It was in the solitude of the wilderness that Elijah heard the still, small voice of God. Even Jesus, at the start of spent 40 days alone in the desert, fasting and praying. These moments of separation were not accidental. God intentionally drew these individuals away from others so they could hear Him without interference. Isolation removes the external voices that compete for our attention. When we are surrounded by people and immersed in activity, it can be difficult to discern God's voice amidst the clamor. In isolation, those voices fade, and we are left with the quiet while whispers become audible. This stillness creates an environment where revelation can flow freely, unencumbered by the distractions of daily life. Isolation also allows for deeper introspection. It forces us to confront questions about who we are, what we are to do, and how we are living our lives. In this reflective state, God often reveals truths about ourselves that we might not see otherwise. These revelations can be uncomfortable but unnecessary for growth and transformation. They strip away illusions and lead us to a more authentic understanding of our identity and purpose. Another powerful aspect of isolation is that it fosters dependence on God. When we are alone, we are reminded that we cannot rely on others for guidance or strength. It is in these moments of vulnerability that we turn to God with an open heart, ready to receive what He has to say. Revelation requires this posture of humility and dependence, and isolation creates the space for it. Isolation also serves as a testing ground for the revelations we receive. In solitude, there is no external validation or immediate affirmation. This forces us to trust what God has spoken and to hold on to His promises even when they are yet to be fulfilled. This deepens our faith and ensures that our confidence is rooted in Him rather than in the opinions of others. The revelations we receive in isolation often carry a weight of purpose that is meant to impact not just our lives but the lives of others. The solitude is temporary, but the insight gained during it is meant to equip us for the work ahead. Whether it's a vision, a calling, or a new understanding of God's character, what is revealed and isolates us to step into the next season with clarity and confidence. Solitude is one of God's most effective tools for refinement. It's in the quiet moments away from the distractions and noise of the world that God works deeply in our hearts and minds to shape us into who He has called us to be. Refinement is not a quick or comfortable process, but is essential for growth and transformation. Solitude provides a space for this work to take place. When we are surrounded by others, it can be difficult to see ourselves clearly. The constant input of opinions, expectations, and comparisons are reminiscent of our strengths and weaknesses. Solitude removes these influences, allowing us to look inward and see what needs to be addressed. In this space, God reveals areas of our character that require attention, pride, impatience, fear, or unresolved pain. These revelations are not meant to condemn, but to heal and strengthen. Refinement through solitude often involves us stripping away of things that no longer serve God's purpose in our lives. This might include unhealthy habits, toxic relationships, or false beliefs about ourselves or God. While this process can feel painful, it is necessary for growth. Just as gold is refined in a fire to remove impurities, solitude becomes a fire where God purifies our hearts and minds. He removes what hinders us so that His image shines more clearly through us. Solitude also deepens our dependence on God. When we are isolated, we no longer have the crutches of human support or worldly distractions. This forces us to lean into God in a way we might not otherwise. We come to understand that He is our source of strength, wisdom, and peace. In this dependence, our faith grows stronger and we begin to trust Him more fully. This trust is a crucial part of the refinement process, as it allows us to surrender to His work in our lives, even when it is uncomfortable. Another aspect of refinement in solitude is the building of resilience and endurance. When we are alone, we face challenges without the immediate comfort of others. This strengthens our ability to persevere and equips us for the difficulties we will encounter in the future. God uses these moments to prepare us for the calling He has placed on our lives. What we learn in solitude becomes the foundation for the strength and wisdom we will need in the next season. Solitude also allows us to hear God's voice more clearly. Without the distractions of the world, we can focus on His word and His Spirit. It is in these moments of quiet that God often speaks the loudest, revealing truths about who He is and who we are in Him. This clarity is part of the refinement process as it aligns our thoughts and desires with His will. Refinement in solitude is not just about removing what is wrong, but also about building what is right. In these moments, God plants seeds of purpose, vision, and character that will bear fruit in the future. He develops qualities like patience, humility, and compassion, shaping us into vessels that can carry out His plans. Solitude becomes a workshop where God crafts us into the people we were created to be. Alone time is one of the most powerful ways to deepen intimacy with God. In the busyness of life, it can be difficult to give God the undivided attention He deserves. Alone time creates a sacred space where we can focus entirely on without the distractions of people, responsibilities, or the noise of the world. It is in these quiet moments that our relationship with God moves from surface level interactions to a profound and personal connection. When we spend time alone with God, we open ourselves to hear His voice more clearly. In the stillness, the clutter of daily life fades and His whispers become audible. God desires a relationship with us that is not just based on communal worship or sad moments, but also on private encounters where He can speak directly to our hearts. These moments of solitude allow us to tune into His presence and receive the guidance, comfort, and love that only He can provide. Alone time with God is also a time of vulnerability and honesty. When we are alone with Him, there is no need to put up facades or pretend to be something we are not. We can bring our fears, doubts, and struggles before Him, knowing that He sees and understands us completely. This raw authenticity deepens our intimacy with God because it allows Him to meet us exactly where we are. In this space, we experience His grace and mercy in profound ways as He assures us of His love and acceptance. Spending time alone with God also nurtures our trust in Him. When we intentionally seek Him in solitude, we demonstrate that we value His presence above all else. This act of prioritizing God builds a foundation of trust and dependence as we learn to rely on Him for guidance and provision. In these moments, we are reminded of His faithfulness, which strengthens our confidence in His plans for our lives. Alone time with God also provides an opportunity for reflection and spiritual growth. As we meditate on His word and listen to His Spirit, we gain a deeper understanding of His character and His will. This knowledge transforms our hearts and minds, aligning us with His purposes. The more we know Him, the more we love Him, and the more we desire to live in obedience to Him. Intimacy with God is not just about emotional connection, but also about aligning our lives with His truth. Prayer becomes especially powerful in alone time with God. In these private moments, we can pour out our hearts to Him without fear of judgment or interruption. We can pray freely, expressing our deepest desires, confessing our sins, and interceding for others. This dialogue strengthens our bond with God as we experience the peace that comes from casting our burdens on Him and trusting Him with our concerns. Alone time with God refreshes and renews our souls. Life can be overwhelming, and we often carry burdens that drain us spiritually, emotionally, and physically. In solitude with God, we find rest for our weary souls. He restores our strength and fills us with His peace, enabling us to face life's challenges with renewed energy and faith. These moments remind us that He is our refuge and strength, always present and always sufficient. Our true identity is solitude. The world constantly bombards us with messages about who we should be, what we should have, and how we should live. These external influences shape our sense of self in ways that may not align with God's design for us. Solitude creates a space where we can strip away the layers of societal expectations and discover who we truly are at the core, created in God's image, chosen, loved, and called to a specific purpose. When we are alone, we are removed from the opinions of others, and in that stillness we can hear God's voice speaking over us. His words define us, not the standards of the world. In the quiet, He reminds us that we are His beloved children, fearfully and wonderfully made. It is in these moments of solitude that we begin to fully understand our worth, not based on achievements or external validation, but on the fact that we are deeply loved by our Creator. Solitude also provides the opportunity to reflect on our true desires and passions, free from the pressure to conform to others' expectations. Often, we live life chasing after things that we think will bring fulfillment, approval, success, or possessions, but in solitude, we can discern what truly aligns with our God purpose. These moments of reflection reveal to us what is meaningful and what matters most, helping us understand our calling and how we are meant to contribute to the world. Without the influence of external voices, we can hear God's specific direction for our lives and recognize how He has uniquely equipped us. Being alone also forces us to confront the parts of ourselves we may try to avoid. In solitude, we come face to face with our insecurities, fears, and flaws, but this is where God works most powerfully. He does not leave us in these places of vulnerability. Instead, He meets us with grace, mercy, and truth. Through these encounters, we come to understand that our identity is not based on our imperfections, but on God's grace and the new identity He offers us in Christ. In solitude, God works to heal the broken parts of us, strengthening our character and making us more fully the person He created us to be. Solitude also strengthens our confidence in who we are because it teaches us to rely solely on God for validation. When we are alone, we are reminded that our value does not come from what we do or what others think of us, but from who we are in Christ. We are not defined by the world's standards or by the labels others place on us. In solitude, we learn to trust in God's affirmation, which is unchanging and unconditional. This is the foundation of true self-worth. In times of aloneness, God solidifies our identity by helping us align our lives with His truth. We are able to examine our thoughts, desires, and actions in light of His word, which reveals who we truly are in His eyes. As we reflect on His promises, we become more secure in our identity, understanding our call to be His ambassadors, agents of love, and instruments of His peace. Solitude becomes a time where we reaffirm that our purpose is tied to His greater plan and that He has uniquely positioned us to fulfill it. Through solitude, we also come to understand that our identity is not static but ever growing. As we continue to seek God in these quiet moments, He reveals more about who we are becoming in Him. He is continually refining and shaping us, and in solitude, we can embrace this process of transformation. It is in these moments that we become more aligned with His will, and our identity in Him becomes clearer, stronger, and more defined. Separation is often the precursor to partnership, particularly when it comes to God's plan for our lives. Before God brings people together to work in unity and fulfill a shared mission, He often first prepares them individually through periods of separation. These times alone are not meant to isolate or discourage, but to cultivate the depth of character, purpose, and vision that will later enrich the partnership. During times of separation, God works on our individual strengths and weaknesses. We are often separated to be refined, to learn important lessons, and to mature spiritually. It is in these solitary moments that God can build the foundation of our character. Without these essential moments of growth, we may not be ready to handle the responsibilities, sacrifices, or challenges that come with partnership. Just as a tree grows strong in isolation before it can bear fruit, so too must we be strengthened during our times of separation in order to fully contribute to a meaningful partnership. Separation also teaches us self-sufficiency and dependence on God. When we are alone, we are forced to rely solely on Him for provision, guidance, and strength. This independence strengthens our spiritual muscles, preparing us to enter into a partnership not with sense of neediness, but with a sense of completeness. We learn that our identity, value, and fulfillment come from God alone, not from the partnership or relationship itself. When two people enter into partnership with this understanding, they can complement one another rather than relying on the other to fill gaps or provide validation. In times of separation, God can also work on the clarity of our calling and vision. This is a time when we are free from the distractions and demands of relationships or external expectations, allowing us to fully discern what God is asking of us. In solitude, He helps us understand our purpose, our gifts, and our passion. This clarity is crucial when entering into partnership, as it ensures that both individuals are aligned in vision and goals. Without this preparation, we may enter into relationships or partnerships prematurely with unclear intentions or misaligned values. Through separation, God also teaches us the importance of balance of boundaries. In partnership, maintaining healthy boundaries is key to mutual respect and long-term success. When we are separated, we have the space to learn how to maintain our own sense of self and personal boundaries, which in turn helps us navigate the dynamics of a partnership with wisdom and respect. We learn how to love ourselves fully, how to set limits, and how to serve others without losing our own identity. This power also builds resilience and patience. In solitude, we face challenges on our own, learning to persevere and trust God in the process. These experiences cultivate strength and determination, which are necessary qualities for any successful partnership. When we enter into a relationship or partnership, we are more prepared to face difficulties together, knowing that we have the inner strength and patience developed during a time of separation. Separation often allows us to heal from past wounds, whether through broken relationships, disappointments, or failures. God uses times of separation to bring healing. We may not fully be able to understand the lessons or reasons behind certain wounds while we are in the midst of them, but solitude provides a space for God to heal our hearts. It is only when we have been healed and made whole that we can enter into partnership with others in a way that is healthy, effective, and fulfilling. As we prepare for partnership, separation also gives us the opportunity to deepen our relationship with God. The more time we spend alone with Him, the more we understand His heart and His desires. This intimate relationship with God allows us to enter into partnerships with a spirit of servitude, humility, and love. It helps us approach relationships not from a place of need, but from a place of abundance and grace. When we know who we are in God and are confident in His provision, we are able to offer the best of us in our partnerships. Separation prepares us to value and appreciate the true meaning of partnership. Without the time apart, we may not fully grasp the importance of unity, collaboration, and working together toward a common goal. Separation gives us the perspective to see that partners is not about being dependent on another person's fulfillment, but about two individuals coming together with complementary strengths, sharing a vision, and working toward a greater purpose. It is in separation that we learn the principles of partnership, commitment, mutual respect, and shared responsibility, which equip these relationships with maturity and wisdom. Aloneness has a profound ability to birth vision. When we are alone, we are freed from the noise of the world and the distractions that come with constant interaction, giving us the mental and emotional space to reflect and think deeply. It is in this quiet that our hearts and minds are able to focus on what truly matters. Without the influence of others, we are left with our own thoughts and the stirring of God's Spirit, allowing new ideas, insights, and dreams to emerge. We are often able to connect with God on a deeper level, seeking His guidance and direction. As we pull away from the busyness of life, we allow ourselves to hear God's voice more clearly. It is in these moments of silence and isolation that He can speak to us, laying out the path He desires us to take. Vision often comes not in the midst of a crowd, but in the stillness where we can fully hear and discern the whispers of God, calling us toward a greater purpose. Aloneness provides the opportunity for introspection. We can examine where we are in life, where we've come from, and where God might be leading us. This time of reflection allows us to see our true desires and passions, which often get lost or buried when we are constantly surrounded by the opinions and expectations of others. In solitude, we can strip away these external influences and focus on what God has placed in our hearts. The desires we once thought were unattainable or unworthy of pursuit become clear in the silence, and we begin to see a vision for our future unfold before us. When we are alone, we are also forced to confront our deepest fears, doubts, and limitations. Aloneness exposes areas in our lives where we might be holding back or where we lack clarity. This confrontation is not always comfortable, but it is essential for the birth of vision. God often uses these vulnerable moments to break down the walls we have built around our hearts and minds, challenging us to dream bigger and to trust in His ability to guide us beyond what we can see. The vision that is birthed in aloneness is often one that requires faith, courage, and a deep trust in God's ability to bring it to fruition. The solitude also allows us the freedom to dream without limitation. When we are alone, we are no longer confined by the expectations or judgments of others. We can envision possibilities that may have once seemed impossible, thinking beyond the practicalities of the present and allowing ourselves to imagine a future full of potential. This is when the dreams that God has placed in our hearts begin to take shape. They move from abstract thoughts to concrete visions that stir our souls and ignite our passions. Aloneness births vision because it enables creativity. Without the distractions of the world, we have the mental space to think outside the box, to innovate, and to dream in ways that wouldn't be possible when our attention is divided. It is in solitude that we are able to listen to our hearts and God's prompting and come up with ideas, solutions, and strategies that we might have overlooked before. Our creative potential flourishes when we are able to give it the time and space to grow. God often uses times of aloneness to prepare us for the vision He is placing within us. Just as the seed must be buried in the ground and hidden from sight before it grows into a tree, so too must the vision be cultivated in the hidden places. During these times, God refines our character, strengthens our faith, and equips us with the tools we need to fulfill the vision He has given us. The solitude becomes a season of preparation, where we are trained for the work that lies ahead. In these quiet moments, God molds us into the person who can carry the vision He has entrusted to us. We often find that the vision is not just about our personal success, but about the impact we are meant to have on others. It is in solitude that we gain a clearer understanding of how God is calling us to serve, to lead, and to bring change to the world around us. The vision He births in aloneness is often a vision that is bigger than ourselves and that occurs us to rely on His strength and to trust that He will provide the resources, people, and opportunities necessary to see it come to life. Aloneness births vision because it offers the sacred space for God to work in us and through us. In these quiet, solitary moments, He shapes our hearts, refines our minds, and plants a vision for the future that aligns with His purpose. It is in aloneness that we discover the dreams He has set before us, and it is in that place of solitude that we are prepared to walk boldly into the vision He has entrusted to us. In conclusion, the power of solitude and aloneness cannot be underestimated. These seasons of isolation, while often uncomfortable, are purposeful moments for our lives. They are not times of abandonment, but opportunities for personal transformation, spiritual growth, and divine alignment. In solitude, God refines our character, clarifies our purpose, strengthens our faith, and reveals the vision He has placed within us. It is in these quiet, private moments that our identity is solidified, our trust in God is deepened, and our preparation for future partnerships and impact is made complete. While the world may see aloneness as a time of loneliness, God uses this season to equip us for something greater. He prepares us not only to walk in our own purpose, but also to enter into powerful partnerships to carry out His vision and to make an impact that extends beyond ourselves. The aloneness we experience today is often the birthplace of tomorrow's breakthroughs. So embrace these times of solitude, knowing that they are moments of divine preparation. In them, God is shaping you into the person you are always meant to be, and revealing to you the purpose, vision, and identity He has for your life.